going to get into medical school. I'm going to get into medical school. And then I kind of got in, and I kind of forgot that once you get to medical school, do you need to do medical school? There's the whole thing of really trying to enjoy the journey, not the destination. It's amazing that running is becoming such a craze now, and everyone's doing it. Like, that is amazing. But everyone's doing it and then signing up for their first marathon immediately. Our doctor's just dropped out of a jungle expedition next week. Will you come along? And I remember going downstairs to my mum in tears, because I was like, this is not part of the plan. I don't know what to do. I'm Becca. I'm a junior doctor who graduated about 4 years ago now. Graduated in the class of COVID in March 2020. And since then, I've been working in the NHS hospitals, doing some expedition medicine, as well as alongside just recently started up the healthcare club to help healthcare professionals. And alongside that, I run and do a lot of sport.
We'll start with running.
Okay.
We'll go on to everything else, I think. Where did that first become a thing for you? When did your running journey, if you will, begin?
So I think, like everyone else in the world, it started during COVID in March 2020. I was a sports girl through and through when I was growing up, and I always played netball. And then when I got to uni, I did some weightlifting alongside that. And as the gyms and netball courts closed in COVID, because I've always found fitness such an important part of my mental health and getting through medical school, I was like, I need to find a new release if I'm going to survive the rest of medical school and being a doctor. So I went out and did my first run in March 2020, which is about 2 kilometers, and it was the worst thing that ever happened to me.
Well, the worst and the best, surely.
It turned out to be the best thing, but at the time I was like, I don't know how I'm going to survive this. I don't know how I'm going to go from weightlifting and playing netball, which has been my whole life, to then doing this thing called running, which I absolutely hate, which is quite ironic that I've said that now after what we're about to go into later this conversation. But started running then, and then everyone did that like NHS run 5 kilometers for the NHS challenge, and then it just started getting longer and longer because you wanted to spend more time out the house because you get that 1 walk a day. So it turned into 5k, then 10k, and then it just became my thing. So when the gyms opened back up again, I was like, oh, I don't want to go back.
Running had taken number 1 spot by that point.
Yeah, so it took about 6 months to properly get into it. But when you're running over summer and being outside more, and suddenly I got a lot more love for the outside from weightlifting and netball. I was an indoor sports kind of person. I hated the outside, which again is really weird to look back on because of running, I started running outside, started running different places, started running in the Peak District because I was at Sheffield Uni. And then I got into hiking and all these other things, which then turned into my career of being outside permanently. And that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for running.
Did you find it a little bit different? Like you said, you kind of played netball growing up and you weightlifted as well. And I think with both of those sports, there's kind of that camaraderie, that environment of other people around you, whether it's in the gym when you're weightlifting. I know some of the training can be solo, but then definitely in netball, you're in a team environment. Was that kind of a little bit different to start with, that kind of solo nature of running?
Yes, 100%. I never wanted to run or swim because I didn't want that pressure on myself. My best friend was a swimmer, and I was like, I don't know how you can get to that start line and know that if you fail, that's your own fault and no one else's. And I was a defender in netball, so I know if it had come to me, and yes, I was the last person it was going to face, it wasn't my problem. It was like, oh, that's everyone's fault. I wasn't taking responsibility for my actions. And so I thought I'd really hate that when it came to running. But actually, it makes you believe a lot more in yourself and put the work in more, whereas you could probably get away with it in team sports a little bit more because you don't have to take that responsibility. So I didn't like it to begin with, but definitely grew me as a person.
That must be similar to your studies though, right? Because, you're going through this insane process of studying to become a doctor, and that is all on you, right? Like, that is all on you. If you do something wrong, or if you don't revise in a certain way, or if you don't pass a certain exam, or you don't do a certain thing, then that might not happen. Is there kind of relatability between the two, studying to become a doctor and kind of getting more invested in your running journey, I guess?
I guess I've never really thought of it like that, but actually now that you've said that, it kind of makes sense that when you're in medical school, even though you revise in a group and everything, it's you doing the exam.
Yeah.
But I always really struggled with medical school and passing those exams. I actually failed 1 year of medical school and I dropped out of another year. And I think I couldn't handle that pressure. And running has definitely taught me that you can actually handle that a lot more. When I get to the start line now of races, I believe in myself a lot more than I probably did previously.
It's quite interesting following your page, and if you don't follow Becca on Instagram, definitely go and do that, because what I love is the way you tell a story in a reel. And actually, that's the first time I came across you, was back in December of last year, when you posted a reel about your brother and how kind of he was the inspiration to you becoming a doctor. Can you talk a little bit about him and that inspiration behind, you know, going to medical school and studying to become a doctor? And then I do want to talk about as well kind of that message of maybe not feeling as fulfilled as you maybe thought you might have at that point as well.
Yeah, so I had an older brother who was 4 years older than me. And when I was 14 and he was 18, he got diagnosed with a rare type of lung cancer, which was obviously devastating at 14 years old. It's a very formative time in our lives, so it was very difficult to manage. But at 14, I was very good at science and I thought, okay, well, I want to help people like my brother. I'm going to become a doctor. So my whole life, I was like, I just want to get into medical school. I'm going to get into medical school. I'm going to get into medical school. And then I kind of got in and I kind of forgot that once you get to medical school, you need to do medical school. But I started it. I was like, I'm going to do this. I failed my first year. It wasn't really working for me, but I had that thing in the back of my head as my brother's really unwell. This whole time he was battling with cancer. And in my head, I was like, if he can go through those hard things and still study to be a physio, like battling that, then I can still do this. And then unfortunately, I was about to go into third year of medical school, he actually passed away when he was 25 of cancer and I was 21. And suddenly it was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know how I'm going to continue to be a doctor. And I had to battle that whole mental health issues, but wanting to do it for him. And I said this in one of my reels, where it was the last thing he said to me was, don't do what doesn't make you happy. And that put me in a massive predicament of, I started being a doctor because I wanted to help people like him. But I was starting to realize that being a doctor wasn't making me happy. And it's then, which side do I go with? And it's something that, even though he passed away 7 years ago now, I still haven't quite figured out where I sit on the level of it, because I really want to help people like him. But it's not necessarily the easiest career that I found in the world. Taking a step away from the hospital and figuring out what kind of doctor I want to be has massively helped. And knowing that you don't necessarily have to be a doctor in a hospital, you could be a doctor in other ways. Because what do you think of when you think of being a doctor? What's the definition of a doctor?
Yeah, I guess I would I guess I would say the stereotypical one, right? You think of somebody, either a GP or you think of somebody in hospital, and they're the two stereotypical thoughts. But I know there are, from following people like yourself, I know there are many other avenues as well.
Yeah, so in my head, it's actually, when you break it down, a doctor is someone who's using medical knowledge to kind of help other people. We always think it has to be in a hospital, but actually, there's other ways we can do this. There's especially with lifestyle medicine now, which is massively growing as we're talking about nutritional and exercise benefits that we have, that whether I could be a doctor in that sense, and that's making me feel a lot more fulfilled and thinking, okay, I can still navigate this path of helping people, but maybe I don't have to do it in the most stereotypical way.
Was that like a hard thing to come around to though? Like in your own mind, like what was that journey to, I can do it in this way? Was it conversations with other people, or was it something you literally had to go through solo to kind of come out the other side and think, look, maybe this is the path I need to go down?
I think it was, and it still is, a massive, massive battle, which is the whole reason I've kind of set up my Instagram as well, really. I didn't realize how many other people were struggling with it and how much it's not talked about. We are so ingrained into there's only one path for being a doctor. And so there's a few people that I spoke to about their people being like, there's other careers out there, but it's so rarely talked about. And I think that's why I get such a following on my page, is because I'm talking about other things that people can do. And like the amount of messages I get saying, oh my gosh, like I never even thought about this in another way. We want to do what you're doing. And I'm like, don't follow me. I don't know what I'm doing either. I'm trying to navigate my own path. And it's literally like, you know there's this way forward, but you can only see one step in front of you. Yeah. And I feel like I'm trying to pay the way for myself. But there's very few people out there who have done a similar thing, which is really struggling.
Yeah, and when it's something like that as well, it's hard to look to a mentor, isn't it? When there isn't a mentor or somebody that has trodden that path, it can become even more difficult, because you're like, well, what's the plan here? Like, where's the next piece of the jigsaw?
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know the answer to that at all. Every day I'm just taking it one day at a time. And I did a talk for King's College London last year about expedition medicine and medicine outside the hospital. And I kind of gave my top 10 like tips that I could kind of do, but I was like, I think these kind of work. And one of them was just saying yes to opportunities. No matter what that is, you just don't know what's going to come about of things. If a friend says, sign up to this random class, go do it. If your friend says, like, come on this run with me, go do it. Or if someone says, go on a podcast, you go do it. Because you don't know what's going to come of it. You don't know what's going to spark inside you, what opportunities could arrive, and what path you could eventually go down. And there's so many points over the past 4 years of graduating that if I hadn't said yes to certain things, then my life would be completely different. Just like if I hadn't taken up running and gone on that first run, then I wouldn't be sat here today being a runner.
I want to talk about that saying yes then, because obviously there would have been a moment when you said yes to going on your first expedition, doing that part of your career and that part of your journey now. When was that? How did that kind of come about? And how did that first sort of foray into expedition medicine happen?
Yeah, so it was 2 and a bit years ago now that I was saying to my friend, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to cope. I don't really enjoy being a doctor. Like I enjoy medicine and I enjoy traveling and being outside, and I don't know how to navigate that as a career. And she was like, oh, have you heard about this thing called expedition medicine, where people go and help people climb mountains or in the jungle? And I was like, mind blown. I need this. And I just Googled expedition medicine, and they just happened to be like an internship for a company where they just needed help with their social media. And I had never done any social media before, which again, it's really weird to say. But they were like, we need expedition, we'll need an expedition intern to do our social media. In exchange, we'll teach you a bit about expedition medicine. And I interviewed for it, and they were like, you haven't got any experience at all, but your enthusiasm is great. So you. And I was literally like, you just told me I have no knowledge. And they're like, yeah, but you're really keen for it, so we'll hire you, we'll take a risk. And I did that for 6 months and did their Instagram for them. and I think I managed to get them from like 2,000 to 3,000 followers, which I was so happy about. And at the end of the 6 months, they said, right, you've learned a bit about expedition medicine. Off you go now. Lovely to meet you. And me and the other interns went, we kind of like it here. We're going to stay. Like, I'm really happy to keep doing your social media for you. I'm actually starting to enjoy this social media. If I do your social media for free, then what can I get in return? And they were like, oh, funny you asked that, actually. Our doctor's just dropped out of a jungle expedition next week. Will you come along? And I remember going downstairs to my mum in tears. So I was like, this is not part of the plan. I don't know what to do. And my mum was like, you need to say yes to this. You need to just stop the plan. Like, you don't know the plan anymore. Just say yes. And I had to like Amazon Prime a whole jungle outfit because you need jungle boots and leech repellent and everything. And then the next week I was on a plane to Malaysia, spent 7 days on a jungle and desert island with 10 ex-military men. I was the only girl, saving people from snakes and building rafts and going spearfishing. And then I got back from that, and obviously my CV looked great, and then I ended up getting lots of jobs, and it was just, it felt very lucky. But then at the same time I was like, if I hadn't just said yes to certain things, then it might not have happened.
What's it like being in these places, these remote locations, these places that, you know, most people only ever see through a screen? Do you feel privileged? Do you feel lucky? Do you feel like I got myself here? Like, what is the feeling of being in those places?
I mean, lucky is definitely something you're feeling when you're up a mountain. You're like, how did I get here? And everyone always asks me how to become an expedition doctor and how to get a job like that. And there's only so much I can say, because a lot of it is just being right time, right place, and luck. There's only so much experience you can get until you get that first job. So I feel very lucky and privileged to be where I am. It's hard to say. I don't know if I'm the best person for the job. And so it's like, how much of my work did I put into it? But there's only so much in the world, and what you do is that you can put down to luck. And then sometimes you've got to take credit and be like, maybe I did put some work into this. Maybe I did. I don't know. It's hard, like, oh no, I really deserve this. But then at the same time, I think everything's got an element of luck and an element of privilege. I'm very aware that I am like a middle-class white female, good education, a doctor, and the funds to be able to take time off to go travel. So I know a million other people couldn't do what I'm doing. So I'm very lucky that I get to do it, really.
Yeah, the reason I asked that question like that is because I think you have to give yourself credit sometimes as well, and people don't do it because, you know, like you said, without going and putting yourself in that position, without making all of those decisions, you wouldn't have the opportunity to do that. So like, I think sometimes it is like, take a step back and tap yourself on the back as well and say, look, yeah, there might be an element of right place, right time, but you always, when people say that, it's like you always kind of have to put yourself in that place, and it always has to be that right time. So it's like it's like that seesaw, isn't it? I think you always have to be there to have the potential of doing that, which is, you know, it's hugely exciting what you're doing. And this year already, like, you've crammed so much into this year in terms of running. You've run a marathon, a PB in a marathon, I believe, was it? Yeah, a marathon PB, a 10K PB. You've been to Kili as well. Like, your diary must look absolutely mad.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot busier last year. Can you believe it? Like, I was away every single month in a different country last year. I went from like the Caribbean to the Arctic to the jungle to the Alps. So this year feels quite I think I'm very lucky that I got to do that. But yeah, I think with the right time, right place, it's always a difficult one to navigate. I always think this with my Instagram as well, when it's like, it's only recently kind of got bigger, and you're like, why have I got so lucky that I've been given such an opportunity to have a platform and a voice? And I know a lot of other like content creators struggles with this as well. It's like, did I deserve this? Did I work for this? Or did I just get lucky that a reel went viral and then I blew up? And it's not like in medical school, getting through medical school and becoming a doctor, that didn't feel lucky. That was, I put the work in, and that was very clear that no luck here. But with other things in the world, it's a really tough one. What is luck and what's not? But yeah, you've got to be in you've almost, to be right time, right place, you've got to be there ready anyway.
Yeah.
Take the jump. It's a difficult one.
I always think it's authenticity as well. That's what I always like find with speaking to people that have got big followings or that have put themselves in a good position. It's that like authenticity about them. If you're real and you're a real person and you tell your story, then there's no reason that, you know, a following isn't going to grow, or you're not going to get that opportunity that you might want, because people like authenticity. People like real people. And I think that's why people are drawn to you and your story as well. We spoke briefly before hitting record on this about your injury that you're currently going through, because, you know, you now use running not only to run in terms of running PBs, marathon PBs, 10K PBs like we've talked about, but like a lot of us use running to kind of balance yourself out. It's certainly what I do on a day-to-day basis to impact your mental health in a positive way. When that's taken away from you, like it has been at the moment, how do you deal with
that? With great difficulty. Running is, as well as being how I keep fit, it is my complete social circle. Every single one of my friends is a runner, and I go to run clubs every single day. It's how I get like my purpose, and it's also part of my job now, because I literally put on my thing, Dr. Becca Salmon, doctor and runner. And I post running content, and everything I do is about running and how to stay fit running, and counting down to races, about how I prep for races. And so I got injured 2 weeks ago, and it honestly at the time felt like my world was crashing and burning. And suddenly it was trying to realize, who am I if you take the runner away? But then now, after we spoke about it earlier, thinking about how that's exactly what happened when COVID happened. Not relating my injury to a global pandemic, but your sport was taken away from you, your hobbies were taken away from you, your freedom was taken away from you, suddenly your social circle was taken away from you, and then you got to find another way of managing that and overcoming that. And I'm not gonna lie, like, it's been two of the hardest weeks of my life with this injury. And because of the mentality point of view, I use fitness as it is my safety net. It's how I stay sane. It's not a replacement for therapy, but it definitely does help massively. And so yeah, trying to navigate that has been really difficult. So trying to find other activities which I can do, which are limited, but swimming has been one of them.
And how has it been getting in the pool? Because, you know, trying something new and going back to kind of like that first 2K run, I guess it must be the same sort of feeling.
Yeah, 100%. And I got in the pool, and I did a 2K swim, which I don't know how I did that on my first one, and I was spluttering.
Everything's 2K.
Yeah. And I'm hoping the same thing happens, and now I just become an awesome swimmer.
Yeah.
But it was really weird going from like a good runner, and I'm saying I know what I'm doing when I go running, to getting in the pool, and I had no idea what I was doing. I got in, I felt so embarrassed. I was like, everyone's staring at me, everyone's going to know I don't know how to swim. And you feel like a complete novice, which is actually a really refreshing thing to feel. Actually feeling stupid and turning up and trying something new. And I have a video of me after my first swim, and I got this massive smile on my face. I was like, I just did something new. Because even though with the running, there's always a new challenge to do, there's always something to do, I'm pretty kind of settled in it. Like, I know what I'm doing now. Yeah, I can go faster, I can go further, but I can run. And it's actually really nice to be able to try something new and get beginner's gains again, basically, and get a new hobby. And a whole new world's opened up to me now.
It's quite humbling, isn't it? Like when you start doing something that you're not used to or you haven't done for a while, you're like, oh wow, like this is hard.
It's so hard, and swimming's just really difficult anyway. Um, there's so much technique to it, which I've got to learn, but I'm excited for the journey. Trust me, if you could say I could go running tomorrow, then I'll probably sack it off. But I'm ready for the journey because who knows? Like the same thing happened when I didn't know how to run, and now look at me. And then hopefully, like I said, you've got to say yes to these opportunities and look at the bright side in life, and just try and keep that positive mental attitude. Really.
And there will be people listening to this now, and I think that conversation is a really important one, that you will get to a point where running does become kind of that thing you do every day if you stick to it. But there are those weeks and those months and those years that lead up to that point that really should be enjoyed as well, because that journey is like, it's such a special thing, isn't it? Like looking back at your first run and looking back at kind of the first year that you were running, that must feel so long ago now. But those gains that you make kind of week by week, month by month, year by year are just incredible, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think there's the whole thing of really trying to enjoy the journey, not the destination. It's amazing that running is becoming such a craze now, and everyone's doing it. Like that is amazing, but everyone's doing it and then signing up for their first marathon immediately, and it's like, well, you've just started running. There's so much enjoyment of just getting out there and seeing how you feel with it. It took me 2 years of running before I signed up for my first marathon. I think because everyone else is doing it, everyone's trying to force themselves. And the same with people who start triathlon, they want to immediately sign up for an Ironman because that's the craze of it. But enjoying the process, enjoying being a beginner, enjoying learning, and then those times will come. Yeah.
I think it's kind of full circle as well. Like, I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but like I'm in a place now where I think I've run 5 marathons in like 20 months or something. And I got the potential of doing another one in the summer. And I'm kind of in a space now where I'm like, I kind of just want to train to like enjoy training and not train to like have this thing that I have to go and do. So like just train without pressure. Like it's quite a freeing feeling actually.
Yeah, just being able to go out and run for the sake of running. I've been seeing it quite a lot on social media. Everyone's just feeling this massive pressure to do everything now, but actually we should just take it back to why we started in the first place, and it was to get out and move our bodies and spend time with people and stay fit. And yeah, I don't think it's healthy to be back-to-back races all the time. I think we definitely need to take a break, and I think that's probably deep down actually what this injury, why it came about. I did 6 ultramarathons in 7 weeks last year, and then went straight back into a marathon training block, and then straight into an ultramarathon training block again. And then I wondered why I got injured. Whereas actually maybe my body was like, maybe you should just take a break and enjoy it. And that's the lesson I'm going to be taking away from this if I ever get back to running.
I'm sure you will. I know it's difficult when you're deep in an injury, but also like when you're deep in those experiences and you're having these opportunities come your way, and there's another ultra marathon in this amazing place, and it's so difficult to say no in that instance, isn't it? It's so difficult to say no. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go and race here. I don't want to have that experience. So like, I don't think anyone would ever say to you, like, you shouldn't have done those races, because they're experiences and moments that you'll never, you'll always have. So yeah, it's just kind of navigating this difficult time now. Talking about like event highlights then, is there certain things that stick out to you, certain places you've been, certain races you've run? Have you got any like running highlights?
I don't think anyone can ever forget their first marathon. So I did Manchester back in 2022. Yes. And that was just amazing. I kind of thought I want to do one marathon and then that's done forever. And then I'll never have to run again. But obviously it opens up this massive world, and that was just really special. And I did it with one of my best friends who actually we were on the netball team together, and then both fell into love with running during COVID together. So that was really nice. And then my other highlight was I did Ultra X Morocco 110 kilometers last year. And that was like my A race. So I'd done all these previous ultras kind of building up to it. And I basically did like a 16-week block for this Morocco ultra marathon. And I don't know if you've ever been to Morocco, but oh my gosh, it is beautiful.
I've only been to Marrakesh, but I mean, even that was lovely. I'd love to do like one of those races because they look unreal.
Yeah, and you were running through the desert by yourself, like turning around, but like there's no one here. Being like, gosh, I've only got a liter of water on me. I hope I'm not gonna die. And you're just in this kind of delirious state of desert. And it was incredible for 110 kilometers getting to do that. And then I came third, and it was the best thing. I just cried and cried and cried, and it was such a mix of doing it with friends, doing it as a personal challenge, doing it in a beautiful place, and like finishing this massive like block. And all I wanted to do was like run an ultra marathon in 2023, and it fulfilled so many different things for me. It was the most special weekend ever, and the Ultra X races are magical. There's something about ultra marathons, the community that it creates. It hits different, and I can't explain it.
I don't know what it is, but I think it's partly to do with like the fact that it takes more time and you get more time in that experience, and also like you're actually enjoying that experience, because sometimes when you're running a marathon on red line, like it's not that pleasant, is it? Like it's pretty gross the most of the time, whereas you know when you're at an ultra, you know you're rarely hitting red line, you're always in that kind of social space when it comes to running. They are so much more enjoyable, I think, personally, from a personal perspective. But, you know, I think sometimes you can fall into the trap, and I'm only talking from personal experience again here, the trap of like, I'm only going to do this because this feels like not necessarily the thing that's easier, but I don't know, for me personally, I'm like, I still want to achieve things in the marathon, but I definitely prefer ultras, if that makes sense. So maybe I should just go and run ultras and forget about the marathon. But then I've still got this little niggle being like, oh, kind of want to do time goals as well. It's such a difficult balancing act when it comes to it.
It's whether you want to go fast or you want to go far. And
exactly. Yeah.
So I did the ultras and was like, right, I'm going to go get my PB marathon and my PB 10K. And then I was like, I'll go back into an ultra thing, which sounds well and good, but actually you're going to get really good at one of them. You've got to focus all your effort into one of them. And naturally you'll get better at the other one if you're doing one of them. And I think everyone tries to cram too many things into 1 year as well. We've got to spread it out. Hopefully we've got so much of our lives ahead of us. And we don't need to do it all now. The great thing about running, and especially ultra running, is you can peak when like you're 40 years old. And you'll actually get better because of your muscle fibers changing. So if I'm only 27 now, then I've got so much time to be running these ultra marathons. I'm so excited for it.
I want to talk before we go about the healthcare club. Where did that idea first come from, and when did you decide to be like, you know what, this is something I actually want to do?
Yeah, so the healthcare club is basically a community that I'm setting up to improve the health of healthcare workers. And this has come from the fact that I really struggled in medical school, not only because of my brother, but I just found the whole process really, really hard. And then since graduating, I've actually been burnt out 4 separate times. I don't know whether that's a sign that I'm not cut out for the job or whether it's a sign of the system failing me. But it made me highlight that actually the health of healthcare workers isn't the best. And as someone who exercises regularly and eats well and doesn't really drink, and my health was failing, I was wondering how many other people were struggling. And it's a very taboo topic as a healthcare worker to speak up about your struggling health, because you're meant to be the person looking after other people. But the more I started speaking up about it because I was like, I can't be the only one feeling like this. Then suddenly people were like, oh yeah, they feel the same. I was like, is no one going to talk about this? Is no one going to say we're all really struggling mentally and physically? Because we don't have time to exercise or necessarily eat healthy. You're doing 12-hour shifts, you're doing night shifts. There's proven evidence that people who do shift work and night shifts have increased risk of like, all these diseases. Like, why is no one speaking up about this? And as someone who has such a passion for fitness and health, improving our physical health, then I wanted to create a community for that. So at this, and because I was trying to also navigate a career outside of the hospital, it kind of made sense that maybe I should just set up my own thing. So I started the healthcare club, which has basically been a couple of run clubs so far, and I've got our first other gym event this weekend. And we're basically getting healthcare workers and medical students, and this could be doctors, nurses, physios, paramedics, anyone to come along. And we basically go on a little run. We talk about healthcare, we talk about our feelings, everyone makes friends, everyone opens up, and then we have a laugh and it's fine. And it's just creating a safe space for people to voice their issues, but then also encouraging people to get outside and maybe take up running as well. So it's very early doors, but the feedback we've been getting is really good. And I think it's highlighting to people that actually healthcare workers are struggling and we actually need to prioritize our health, because ultimately, how are we going to look after other people if we can't look after ourselves? Every time that I was burnt out, I had to take time off work and I couldn't turn up to work to help other people. Whereas if I just focused on my health a bit more, then I could have helped other people more.
I think through COVID, obviously everybody looked up to healthcare workers. And I think as life has come back to kind of normal for most people on a day-to-day basis, that's been forgotten about a little bit. And it shouldn't be, and it can't be. But I think it's just people going back into the everyday throes of their own lives, which I know are busy and have their own stresses. But, you know, there's been plenty of headlines written over the past 24 months about junior doctor strikes, to name one thing, and other things as well. And I think people, you rightly say, look up to medical professionals and think, oh, they are kind of like, they're the zenith, nothing's ever going to be up with them. But at the end of the day, you're just normal people, aren't you? They've studied to do a very special thing. So I think what you're doing is, it's really special, and I've not ever seen anything like it. So I really hope it continues to grow. Have you got kind of aspirations and goals with it, or is it more of a, look, this is the idea, it's going now, I'm going to kind of see what happens with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so early doors. I've just got to kind of see what happens. I think ideally I'd love to have a community set up in every city or every hospital, and a little community set up, and then be able to take people away on like weekends away to the mountains or retreats or anything, and hopefully it will be like really discounted or free if possible. I just want it to be, whether it can be like a foundation or a charity or anything, just to help other people. That's all I want, is to get people outside, moving their bodies. And I'm really excited to see what happens with it. And hopefully I can continue it, but we'll see what happens if I have to go back to the hospital working full time, whether I'm going to have the time to do it. It's such a balancing act. But I'm excited.
Yeah, you've got so much going on. You've got so much exciting stuff going on. I can't wait to see what's next for you, Becca. We'll finish with this. If you could take yourself all the way back to that first 2K run, that first run that you went on in COVID and you absolutely hated, and tell yourself one thing that you were going to get from running, what would you tell yourself?
Oh no, it made me cry like thinking about it, because suddenly I'm feeling like I'm going to tell my person about how I feel when I start swimming, but say it's going to be okay, and the opportunities, that saying yes to things, how it can open up your whole world and your life is just going to completely change. To be excited and not be scared, I think.